Being able to care for the home and care for my children is one of the greatest privileges of my life. My oldest child is now 16 years old. I've been married for over 17 years. So I have had the opportunity to learn and grow in this space for almost 2 decades at this point. A lot of people assume that I grew up in the kitchen, baking bread, making things from scratch. And my mom is a good cook and she knows how to make food from scratch. But I didn't actually grow up practicing all of this. When I first got married, I remember calling my mom so many times and asking her, how do you make a roast? What ingredients go in lasagna? What temperature does this need to be for me to know it's fully cooked and I'm not going to die? I knew literally nothing about homemaking. Now that's just talking about in the kitchen, but I also didn't know how to manage a home or what it took to stay on top of making sure that the laundry's done, that everything's cleaned. And sometimes I think when we've been on this journey a while, we take for granted knowing what to do, what the next step is each day to stay in a momentum and flow and a rhythm so that it all works out, that it took some time to actually get there to know what that even was. So for you new homemakers, even those of you who have been a homemaker for a while but feel like you still don't know what you're doing, you lack the confidence, you're not qualified for this job, I want to encourage you a bit today. It can be learned, it can be improved, and you didn't have to grow up this way for you to build those muscles. Today I am making my brioche donuts from the blog, only I am doing all whole grain flour and I'm making it a sourdough version. So more on that in just a bit. One way that you can be prepared to take on the task of feeding your family every day is by having a well-stocked pantry that you can easily pull from. Of course, this comes with time, knowing what to stock in there. But Thrive Market is a great way to find natural and organic ingredients to fill it and make it ready for healthy meals ahead. Thrive Market is today's video sponsor. They are a membership-based online grocery store where you can sort by your dietary preference. So if you are paleo, dairy-free, gluten-free, you can make it to only show those options. So it's a very streamlined shopping experience. Plus orders over $49 ship for free. So this is a very convenient way to stock your home with healthy ingredients. Things like spices, condiments that are organic, chips fried in avocado oil, supplements, whole grain pastas, and einkorn products. I get all of those from Thrive Market because I can't find them locally at all where I live. And if I could, I think there are some like specialty grocery stores I could drive to. They're very expensive and of course inconvenient to go get them. And on Thrive Market, they are such a great price. Thrive Market also has a deals section. I like to jump in there and just see if there's anything that I've been wanting to try. One of my favorite things I get from Thrive Market is their chocolate chunks because they have all quality ingredients, no seed oils. Our pantry is never without them. There are so many things on Thrive Market that we couldn't live without. Thrive Market is offering Farmhouse on Boone viewers 30% off your first order plus a free gift worth up to $60 with my link, thrivemarket.com/Farmhouse on Boone. If you've ever thought about trying Thrive Market, get in on this special offer and start getting those healthy and organic ingredients in your pantry today. Thanks again, Thrive Market, for sponsoring today's video. I'm going to let that brioche dough sit for a while before doing some stretch and folds. I have a serum that I want to make. I've been getting a beautiful serum for a while, and I just wanted to try my hand at mixing one up with things that I had at home. I did order a few things as well, but I had most of the ingredients, so I thought I would try it. It definitely doesn't smell the same as the original, but it makes my face feel moisturized, so that's the goal. I think another aspect of getting better at homemaking and having the confidence to do so when you didn't grow up a homemaker or you weren't taught how is to not compare yourself to others. And that's easier said than done, especially in today's world. Back when I first became a homemaker, I was calling people I know, calling my mom, asking lots of questions, asking my grandma. There wasn't Google even. I'm sure there probably was, but we didn't have it. You're always going to feel behind and therefore uninspired if you're always comparing yourself. And if you're not inspired, it's going to be hard to try more and improve your skills. And also be encouraged with small wins. That first bread you make from scratch, even if you have to turn it into French toast casserole. The first loaves of bread I made were definitely not Instagram worthy, but I didn't have Instagram, so I wasn't comparing. I just felt so successful that I was able to make something that my family could eat. The first room that I designed from scratch and painted myself with a fresh color and filled with an imperfect collection of thrift shop decor and furniture and curtains I sewed. I was happy with those small wins, and I encourage you to do the same. On farmhouseonboone.com, I have a recipe for brioche donuts. They're not sourdough, but I took out the yeast and just added in about a half cup of sourdough starter. I let all of the ingredients sit together for about an hour and then started performing stretch and folds throughout the day. Now, what you will notice is the first one, very shaggy. The gluten is not developed at all, but throughout the day, as I do more stretch and folds, it gets more pliable, stretchier, and it really comes together beautifully, even without a mixer. This is all whole grain. So we'll do more with these donuts later, but I wanted to show you how I am taking a regular all-purpose flour, instant yeast recipe and make it into a sourdough whole grain recipe. Again, these are these things that you notice and improve with time just by doing it more. So I used to actually have this whole process for how I would adapt a recipe from sourdough or from regular to sourdough. Now I just take the yeast out, add in a little bit of sourdough. That's all I do. And I kind of can feel the dough and know what it needs as far as stretch and folds with the whole grain, and that all comes with time. Another thing that will improve over time that will become so much easier is looking in the fridge and figuring out what to make with random ingredients on the fly. We had a whole bunch of pork hocks in our freezer because we just restocked our meat. We got a whole hog and half a cow from my sister's farm. But I still had pork hocks in there from last time because we don't really love them. And so I put off using them. We just don't really love having ham all that much. So a lot of our cut order we put into sausage. But we did have some ham. So I put them in the Instant Pot. Looked in the pantry, noticed we had some orzo pasta that we needed to use up. We had some peas. And so we're making kind of a cream sauce with onions, whole grain flour, cream, peas, cheese, ham, and this was a winner from the family. Everybody really enjoyed it. Another tip I have for learning how to be a homemaker when you weren't taught how is to practice repetition. Don't try everything new under the sun. Get good at one thing and then move on to something else. So with bread, get really good at one bread recipe. If you just started with sourdough and you were just starting to get comfortable with all purpose, and now I'm like, you should use whole grain for everything. Don't just jump ship. Just figure out what you're doing with that all-purpose flour and then eventually move on to whole grain. Or if you already were getting good at whole grain and then you got online and you saw all these beautiful bowls that were made in cast iron Dutch ovens with all these beautiful patterns and scores, and they're huge and beautiful, and you're making a sourdough whole grain sandwich loaf in loaf pans like I used to do, way back in the day before all of that. Don't jump ship. Just keep getting good at what you know. And if you want to move on to other things like other cuts of meat or more complicated recipes of some kind, I think practicing repetition before moving on to something more complicated will give you confidence. It will build skills. It'll help you to learn something new about that thing that maybe a book couldn't tell you. In almost everything in life, you learn better by doing, on the fly, in the thick of it, trial, error, mistakes. That is where the best learning happens. If you can find a more experienced friend or mentor in your community who will take you under their wing and show you things one-on-one, that's awesome. But if you cannot, which a lot of people can't really find that. It's just not done as much in this culture. The next best thing is find someone who is as dedicated in improving and learning something new, whatever homemaking skill that might be, as you are, who you can get together with, maybe physically once a week or so. You could get together in your homes and try things together. It'll help motivate you. It'll keep you accountable. If you can't do it physically, maybe FaceTime, maybe through texting or some kind of group chat, or a weekly coffee date where you can just talk about your successes and failures. That community, I think, really helps. When I was a younger homemaker, my sister and I did a lot of things together. We were always comparing notes. We actually got together and tried things. And even if we were both kind of the blind, leading the blind, the social aspect of it helped to keep us motivated. I let this brioche dough rise for about 24 hours and then cut it into small squares. I started doing this more recently because it's too much of a hassle to actually cut it into donut shapes, and it ultimately tastes the exact same. So this to me is just a really easy way to serve donuts. I am frying them in pork lard. Now, one thing to note, I made them kind of large here originally. After doing several batches, I cut each of these squares into thirds because I was having a hard time getting them done all the way in the middle without them burning on the outside. And I've done it like this before, and I was having that same issue last time, but it just occurred to me halfway through this to solve it by cutting these into thirds. Again, another thing that you just trial error. I am learning new things in this home just constantly. I am always tweaking things. And since I have a lot of hungry kids, there is plenty of room for experimentation, and it always gets eaten regardless. For the recipe, head to farmhousehomeboon.com, search brioche donuts. I did it the exact same, except sourdough instead of the yeast, whole grain, hard white wheat berries instead of the all-purpose. And of course, the rising a little bit longer because it's sourdough. If you're familiar with sourdough, it really isn't hard to adapt any regular recipe. When it comes to teaching the next generation homemaking skills, the things that you're learning in your own home, I think we overthink this sometimes because many of us have learned everything we know in homemaking, whether we're just beginning or we've been at it a while, by trying things. And sometimes we just, I think as a result of the education system and our mindsets around that, we think we need to have these dedicated lesson times. Like people have said to me, well, I would love to, do sewing lessons with you or something, or with the kids. And I actually didn't even technically teach my kids how to sew, but gave them the resources that they needed, of course, available to answer questions when it comes to sewing, cooking, just like my mom was available to answer those questions for me. But mostly they're just around me experiencing the home. And I think there's so much value in that.